All right, looks like people are filing in. So I hope everyone is enjoying the summit so far. Our theme for the next hour is the future of ads, the end of cookies. During today's flight, our crew is going to outline the top things marketers need to know or need to do now to prepare for the death of the cookie. We'll also cover the benefits of focusing on gathering and employing first-party data in digital marketing and how to tap into the first-party data you already own in CTM. Before we get started, there are a few housekeeping items. First, this session, along with all of our sessions, are going to be recorded. The recordings will be available on the Launchpad website within the next few days. We'll also email you a link to the recording. And we discovered that the recordings are live moments after the session ends. So you can grab the recording of this probably at like 3:05. So also don't forget to use our hashtag. So I wanted to point out that we do have separate registration tickets for each day of the summit. So please make sure that you are registered for all 3 days. I'll be participating in many of those sessions and I would be thrilled to see all of you there. All right, I'm gonna paste these links into the chat just to make sure I know that you guys have them. There you go. So everyone should have access to that. So next, if you haven't heard already, when you attend any of our Friday sessions, you'll be entered into a raffle to win a professional services package valued at $600. So make sure that you attend with us on Friday. All right, our flight's agenda today includes first-party data versus third-party data. We're going to shatter some myths. And then lastly, we're going to discuss creative ways to use the first-party data that you're already collecting in CTM. I'm excited and humbled to introduce you to our crew. Captaining today's flight, we have Navah Hopkins. She's the VP of Strategic Marketing at Adzooma, a veteran of the digital marketing industry, a top 25 PPC expert. She's a frequent contributor to SEMrush, WordStream blogs, and webinars. She's a proud dog mom, Star Wars nerd, and avid gamer. Welcome, Navah.
Thank you so much for having me. I am beyond excited to share lessons learned and to hopefully empower you all on your journey into the first-party data world, the privacy-first web, and specifically also leveraging CTM and the amazing tools at your disposal on that journey.
Great. And then co-captaining our flight, we have our very own Lisa Salvatore. Lisa is the Senior Manager of Paid Media here at CallTrackingMetrics. Lisa uses her paid media knowledge and expertise to promote our solution to businesses interested in personalized customer experiences and actionable insights. She operates under the strategize, execute, analyze, and optimize mindset. In addition to everything digital marketing, she loves running, live music, and cats. Welcome, Lisa.
Thanks, Jess. Hi, everyone. Excited to be here, and I look forward to talking about CallTrackingMetrics and first-party data.
Awesome. And lastly, sitting in the jump seat is me. I'm Jessica Michaels. I'm a resident product coach. I've been with CTM for over 7 years, and I have a background in marketing. I like to say my superpower is relating to our clients and translating their needs into training materials to help drive product adoption that creates and inspires them to become heroes. So before I hand it over to our presenters, I wanted to make sure that we're all comfortable with our control panel. If you have any questions during the presentation, please enter them into the Q&A box. We have a team who will be answering them live, as well as we'll have time at the end of the session to address any live questions. And if you've attended any of my training webinars before, you know that I like to start with a few exercises. So here they are. So first, if you can hear me and see my screen, which would be polls and then me here, will you raise your hand on your Zoom control panel? All right, I saw hands go up before I asked, so I know I have some repeat people. All right, looks like I see hands going up all over the place, which means we're in a good place. People can hear and see. Let's go ahead and lower those hands. Oh, they keep going up. Okay, so next we're gonna get familiar with the chat and Q&A box. So in the Q&A box, using the thumbs up or thumbs down emoji, Tell us, do you have a plan for first-party data acquisition? So let's take a look at our Q&A box. All right, I see them coming in. Lots of both. Okay, fair enough. And then in the chat box, using the emojis, tell us how you feel. How does this topic make you feel? Does it make you feel happy, sad, worried, excited, or indifferent? So why don't you go ahead and paste those emojis in the chat box so we can get a vibe of the crowd. All right, I see some happy. Excellent. What is the sweaty one? I think that means nervous. A couple of those. Great. A cookie. I second that. A little bit crazy. Angel. These are great. A little indifferent. A cloud. Okay. Well, so we have different emotions about this, but that's great. So luckily, we have some of the best experts in the galaxy here to guide us to safety with first-party data. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Navah.
All right, so you all should be able to see my screen. Just confirming, yay, awesome. So thank you so much for that wonderful introduction. Very excited to chat through this whole topic with you, because at the end of the day, any anxiety tends to stem from just any confusion. So let's dispel that and dive right in. So the first piece that we're going to look at is, what is the key difference between first-party data and third-party data? Because a lot of that confusion, a lot of that frustration stems from, well, what can we actually use and what can't we? So at its heart, first-party data simply means someone has consented to share their information with you. That might be tracking activity on the site. That might be personal identifier information like a phone number, an email, things like that. And it is information that they have consented to give to you. On the flip side, third-party data is anything that you may have bought or anything that a network may use to target. So why this is important is because the ad networks, and to be honest, this also does impact a little bit on the SEO side too. All of the tools at our disposal are more shifting towards first-party data. Targeting is being much more focused on those customer match lists where someone is consented to give you that information. We're looking at a lot more modeling as opposed to one-to-one conversions. So from a data standpoint, Google, Microsoft, Facebook, to be fair, Amazon as well, there's a lot of that roll up. So when we're thinking about, for example, on the Facebook side, a lot of folks struggled because of that 7-day attribution piece. So if you were used to being able to see 28 days out, suddenly now you only have 7 days. So it might seem like some campaigns that were succeeding are now failing. We need to make sure that we verified our websites, where before we could probably get away with maybe not doing those holistic checks. And there was a limit to certain custom audiences, because depending on whether someone opted in or opted out, that really could wreak havoc. The other thing worth noting is that as much as Microsoft has kind of paved its own path, they have followed a lot in Google's footsteps in terms of the search terms being available versus not. So our questions about, are we actually investing in the right traffic? If we're paying for it, shouldn't we get access to the data? And then also following with that conversion modeling. I will give a shout out to Microsoft. I love Microsoft dearly. Parakeet, their solution to Google's Flock, which we're not going to spend as much time on today because it's effectively been neutralized in discussions. But their solution to the idea of a cohort was really interesting, because where Google's solution with Flock, you would just be opted into whatever cohort across a 7-day period. With Parakeet, you the user could choose which cohort you belong to. So from a targeting standpoint and just a user experience standpoint, very, very powerful. So all of this is to say there's been a lot of hubbub about what is this all doing to us, what's happening. And so that leads us into our myth busting section. So in terms of what is confusing and what is frustrating, there are 3 core areas. One is retargeting, which is incredibly valid. A lot of us kind of default to a certain way of thinking about retargeting. So hopefully this session will help you either branch out or help your team, boss, clients branch out in how you think about remarketing and retargeting. They effectively mean the same thing. Conversion tracking. So what does today's conversion tracking need to look like, and what might need to be done to shore up those gaps? And then finally, quality control. What does it mean in today's world to have a meaningful campaign, to have that meaningful tracking and that meaningful results? So the first is that retargeting is dead. This is 100% a myth. But the reason why it is a myth is because a lot of people think of retargeting as just you go to the site and then you nag someone until they buy the thing. This plays out in dynamic remarketing where you have a feed showing the person the product. It plays out from just following someone with a display ad, a search ad. There's a number of different ways it can play out. And there's a whole world of audiences out there that are, to be honest, better than just straight website retargeting. And I'm going to share a little bit of data with you to help you understand why I think so, but also to help your teams understand why it's okay to not have perfect one-to-one retargeting. So when we're thinking about consensual conversations where a person has bought into the whole idea of having that continued conversation, what's really fascinating is that when we look at in-market intent, affinity, basically audiences that are determined by the ad network, they have kind of a mixed performance. They're kind of on par with first-party data, but there's a little bit of fluctuation there. Whereas when we have someone sharing that information versus website visitor, it is hands down a better cost per acquisition. What this data should also help you understand is that not using an audience in your campaigns is 100% not acceptable anymore. In this first party data world, in this ROI centered world where we have to kind of bridge the gap between just getting someone to the site versus the sale versus what actually happened, we do need to make sure that we are leveraging audiences because that cost per acquisition spikes considerably when we do not have an audience. But just in terms of kind of taking comfort, that website visitor performed actually worse on cost per acquisition than the customer list, and also actually that similar audience where Google took that customer list that we gave to them and found net new people that shared traits with it. So long as you are feeding that information into the machine, you will see better results. The second thing worth considering is also that conversion rate. So this is where the data is actually a little bit interesting. Just because someone converts doesn't necessarily mean that they're a good conversion. And here's what I'm talking about there. So just to remind you, before looking at that CPA averages, we saw that in-market performed slightly worse than similar audiences in website visitors and customer list, where it actually had the best conversion rate. And that's because at the end of the day, the ad platforms are really good at understanding, okay, if a conversion happens, we'll keep hitting that conversion button, not necessarily thinking about, is this the right conversion or is it not? The other thing we're thinking about when we're looking at that customer list did perform slightly lower on the conversion rate than say website visitors. But again, still miles and miles better than no audience. And then also from a similar audience standpoint, it outperformed that as well. So again, it's a very powerful audience. And we'll finish up on the data with click-through rate. So this is how many people actually engaged. So you'll see that it's fairly comparable between similar audience, website visitor, and customer list. I will point out here that no audience on click-through rate actually outperformed intent and affinity. And this is kind of a good reminder that creative can make up that difference if you're not able to build that first party data, so long as you're message mapping appropriately. But at the end of the day, so long as you can bring that good audience along with that message, you will have the best experience. So all of this is to say, good riddance to nagging campaigns. Retargeting is alive and better than ever. We're just not nagging people to death. We're celebrating that consensual conversation. So the second big myth is that conversion tracking is impossible now. So iOS 14.5 was terrible. It was objectively terrible. And the reason it was terrible is because there were the amount of changes, both technical and kind of strategic. It wasn't just a clear list that came out all at once. It was this long process of figuring out what happened. So conversion tracking issues were rampant. There's a lot of attribution issues. For those of you that remember that solemn day when Facebook just crashed full on, and then people were still seeing Facebook leads happen. Like this was a big lesson in what are we doing to own our data and understand why our data is happening from each of these various sources. And it's also worth noting that with Google moving to more of a modeled solution, thinking about that data-driven attribution, where we no longer necessarily need volumes and volumes of those individual conversions, Google can kind of fill in the gaps with its modeling. And then also a consolidation of bidding strategies that we're really more focused again on modeling. So all of this is to say, 100% conversions are really vital to machine learning. Like whatever the ad platform, you do need to build in some degree of conversions, whether they're micro conversions or actually valuable conversions to help the ad network serve your ads. However, you also can share your data to ensure that the conversions that you're tracking are actually backed up by real world value. So absolutely do not feel like you have to fully rely on just what is able to be tracked. You want to build in those sources, and most CRMs will actually be able to integrate with those ad platforms, whether it's a direct integration, whether you're using Zapier. I know CallTrackingMetrics is really, really good at integrating with both Google Analytics and with Google Ads, also with Facebook. So there's a lot of good that can be done just with those offline conversions. And it's also important that you're using real sales data, not just the integrations from your CRMs, but also those conversations with your sales teams, just to ensure that beyond a shadow of a doubt, you know what is happening and you trust the data that is being fed into the system. The final point I will make here, you really want to make sure that you have your global site tag installed. This is crucial so that you can take your brand, your web presence, from kind of the old era of marketing into the new era of marketing, where modeling is the rule, it's not the exception anymore. And also from a compliance standpoint, that global site tag is going to help you, especially on the international front, if you have to worry about any of those compliance pieces. So myth busted, 100%. You now are going to own your sources of truth, and you're not going to delegate out and do what I would call lazy conversion tracking. You're going to take that ownership over your data. So the final myth that we're going to look at is actually going to be a really good segue into the whole final section that I'm going to be talking about, which is that quality control is gone. Well, not really. There's a certain impact, though, that this whole conversation has had on digital marketing. And so we're going to spend the rest of our time here, and then I'll pass it on to the amazing folks over at CallTrackingMetrics to talk about some specifics you can do within their platform. So when we're thinking about audiences, as I showed before with the data, keywords are not really as important as creative and audiences. Creative is a close second to audiences, but ultimately audiences are the core of what we need to focus on. The idea of a cohort where someone is identified as exhibiting certain behaviors is far more important than a semantic search term. And we really cannot be afraid to ask for emails anymore. When we look at the conversion rates versus the engagement rates, and this was a Just Do Know study that looked at 3 billion website sessions, yes, 100% the engagement rate was a little bit lower when a brand asked for the email, but the conversion rates were substantially better. So we do want to make sure that we are asking for that information. The other piece that we really want to think about is how much are we abiding by really good rules of engagement because it's good human behavior versus we're just doing it to do it. So when we think about the idea of trust, because that is a big part of gaining that first party data, you want to build those consensual conversations. There's a 202% conversion rate improvement when you echo the language from your ad on the landing page. And that makes a lot of sense because your ad should be making a promise that your landing page can deliver on. So if you're not echoing the language, you're not fulfilling on your promise. The other thing to think about is that 82% of folks are going to read reviews before they buy. So however much we can factor in reviews into the entire purchasing funnel, the more likely it is that we'll be able to earn that first party data and continue those conversations. So a couple of examples of how to capture that first party data, since we're talking about leveraging it. The first is just thinking about how can I do a simple offer if this is truly a net new person. I strongly recommend doing two-step opt-ins for that first party data because you're getting the user in the habit of saying yes. That particular pop-up, it had about a 12% engagement rate, with again, a 27% conversion rate. So really, really powerful. It was very good at not only capturing the information, but also at securing information from people who could ultimately be nurtured into a sale. And if folks aren't ready, there's no harm, no foul about putting on an exit pop-up. So when you have an exit pop-up, you do want to build in a sense of urgency, but a really common pitfall in creative, and this kind of goes into the idea of the mindset shift your creative needs to take in different stages of the funnel. When someone is on the search result page, when someone is on a social channel, whatever platform that they might see an ad, the term your is perfectly fine. But the moment that they've come to your site, you want to shift it to my, like the thing belongs to them, the promo belongs to them, the item belongs to them, everything is theirs already. So that it's not that they're buying something, it's that it's theirs, they're picking it up. They're completing the transaction. And of course, we want to instill that sense of FOMO or fear of missing out. So in terms of data on exit promos, I grant you the engagement rate was substantially lower than that entrance promo. But this particular one had actually a better conversion rate. And in terms of just general 10% off exit, like I have zero qualms giving a slight discount in order to capture that first party data and get the sale. So you miss 100% of the shots you don't take, build that into your strategy. But on the point of strategy, you don't always have to give away the farm. If your brand can position certain offers or certain bits of content as this VIP list, or be the first to know, be our beta tester, our product innovators, get the first to know about like our special stock, that can be a really powerful way to get in emails as well, or phone numbers from a texting standpoint. And I will say the desktop does perform a lot better at the no promo solution because mobile tends to be more of an impulse device. When you're on your phone at kind of irresponsible o'clock and you make irresponsible o'clock purchases motivated by promos. Desktop is a little bit, you're a little bit more considered. And so that kind of more intellectual VIP moment is going to be more useful. So that particular promo was actually able to drive almost 4,200 emails, which is 4 times the minimum needed for a true remarketing campaign with emails. So just for everyone's purposes, you need at least 1,000 emails in a remarketing list in order to actively target. So this promo was actually able to drive about 4,200, and 24% of the folks that gave an email went on to buy something. So again, really, really powerful. We're now going to transition from capturing the information to just thinking about ads and landing pages. And it's important to remember that they perform equal but different roles. So in thinking about ads, as I mentioned before, they're going to make a promise that your landing page needs to deliver on. But you also want to be mindful that the ad that works really well on Facebook is not going to be the same ad that works well on display. Your text on search is not necessarily the text you want to use on display or Facebook, so on and so forth. So we just want to be mindful of the format. So for example, this ZipRecruiter ad beautifully takes advantage of the clock mentality of having that smiling face pointing down at the call to action. So it grabs your attention and then sets you up with a really powerful call to action of learn more. Learn more. Anytime you can use learn, it's one of the best calls to action because it has the least amount of risk associated. Learning is a purely positive thing. When you want someone to buy something, with a display ad as opposed to just being aware and blitzing them. You want to build a button into the creative, like with that GameStop ad. One of my absolute favorite video ads and just general campaigns in general, like I love this campaign. I use it in almost every example I can, is the iPhone that's privacy, or privacy that's iPhone, because not only does it demonstrate the product and has a really great brand sentiment, it actually covers the face so that you, the user, can project yourself onto this person holding the iPhone. So from a demographic standpoint, it actually takes a lot of the onus off of you, the marketer, because this could be shown to really anybody, because you're able to project onto the person. And again, with text ads, you just want to make sure that it's clear, concise, and that your call to action is typically in headline 2, something that grabs you, then headline 1. So just a little bit of a commentary about creative. I mentioned that learn is typically better than try. The other thing just to be aware of, and I want to be mindful of time, and free actually underperforms to transparency and pricing. So if you are trying to force someone to engage with you just because something is free, as opposed to say, here's the transparency and price, not only are you doing yourself a disservice by not pre-qualifying traffic that they're bought into your price point, you also might actually be scaring them away. So definitely look for opportunities to be transparent on prices. And so with landing pages, these are responsible for actually closing the deal. So just a couple of notes on CRO here. We want to build in that accessibility. So this brand does a really good job of building in that accessibility in with their brand, really good trust symbols with where they've been featured. That cookie piece is very clear and specific, but I'll also actually call out that their CRO components where they're trying to upsell you or capture information is in sans serif, where their brand is a serif font. Sans serif is so much easier to read than serif, and so it's actually a good thing to call those out in that easier to read font. So just a couple of good notes there. So this was all a lot of high level. We're now going to talk about me. And as was mentioned, I am an avid dog mom, gamer. I'm the biggest nerd you can imagine. I'm a big metal fan. I speak at conferences. Like, there's a number of things that go into marketing to Navah Hopkins and the various bits of content that I will consume. So I'm going to share with you the story of how one brand, specifically Lumi, that I actually bought the thing, marketed to me, and the steps in the journey that I took to become their customer. So my journey with Lumi actually began on YouTube, and you can see the various videos that were there, judge or not at your discretion. And what's really fascinating is that 80% of folks will go on to buy something, and they'll begin their journey actually watching a YouTube ad. YouTube is such an underrated channel, especially in this day and age where a lot of people gravitate to search first or to social first. And what I love about YouTube is that you can have short little brand blips, or you can have a full, beautiful ad. We can have a whole session about YouTube. I'm not going to go into the mechanics of YouTube here. If you have questions, we'll pick it up in the Q&A. But I will say that it is something that you should be thinking about in this first-party data world. So when I went to click the ad, I was dropped off on an Amazon page, and I was so disappointed because I'm not a big fan of Amazon. Like, if I can give the money directly to the brand, I would much rather do that. Amazon is a great branding play. We can have a discussion again, a whole session about Amazon. But what I did love about it, great reviews, really good information, but that price point was horrifying to me. Like, I'm used to paying maybe $4 for deodorant, and to pay $30, that is sticker shock up to wazoo. I was not ready to give Amazon $30, even though the product seemed interesting to me. So I was part of that 72% that abandoned the shopping cart. But Facebook followed up beautifully. And what I loved about their follow-up is that it was a gorgeous product-focused ad that still had their personality. What I also loved about it is that they buried the person beneath the product. So again, not forcing me to see like, oh, does this person really look like me? Is this really, are we really similar? It was much more focused on the product. So really love that. I did enjoy that when on desktop, I ended up making the purchase on mobile, but on desktop, they did have that exit giveaway. And it is worth noting that just like you can get that sale, 49% of folks do like hearing from brands on a weekly basis. So long as you're interesting, it will be good. So just a couple of notes about their shopping cart exit process. One, I loved feeling good about the price. So I went from being sticker shock at 30 to 25.48 and feeling amazing about myself. I'm like, oh man, I saved so much money from what this was going to be. I also loved that I unlocked free shipping, which is great. The lavender sage, like I happen to love lavender, so it was great. I landed on exactly the right page for me, and I was put into a place where this is a good, happy purchase. Now, 60% of folks would be less likely to buy if they had a bad mobile experience. They had a great one. So I'm instead going to tell you the story about how I tried to, and I still have failed to buy a PlayStation 5. And Walmart and Target have forever lost my online business because of how horrendous this process was. So with Walmart, it was 2 scrolls to be disappointed. Not only that, they tried to sell me a protection plan. And again, with the Target one, it was actually a slow load, and I took 3 scrolls to see that it was out of stock. So again, had they have told me this right at the front, I would have been fine. Had they have asked me for an email so I could go on a waiting list to be the first to buy the product, like, I want to give you money, let me buy this product, I would have been fine. They did not do that. So I have actually not bought anything on Walmart or Target.com since that horrible process of trying to buy a PS5, because not only did they burn me as a customer with no waiting list and it was just a bad experience, they also made me scroll on a mobile device. So don't do that. Like, put the qualifying information up at the top. So the main takeaways I'd like for you to think about, and then I'll pass it over to Lisa. Build CRO into everything that you do. In a first party data world, in a privacy first web, the more that you can build the idea of consensual conversations and building trust with your customer, that the easier it will be. You also want to adapt to how you speak to your customers across those various channels. Don't be afraid to come up with different creative for different personas. And you want to account for mobile versus desktop experiences. So needless to say, quality control is 100% still here. We still 100% can take ownership over our data. And now I'm going to pass it over to Lisa to talk about how CallTrackingMetrics can help you do that with your accounts.
Great. Thank you, Navah. Okay. All right. So now that we just heard Navah tell us how important it is to leverage our own data, I want to talk about how to get the most out of your first party data in CallTrackingMetrics. So CTM is uniquely positioned to support businesses through the transition to a cookieless world, and it's full of first party data, from your interactions and conversations with customers to insights around what marketing campaigns are most effective. And marketers can tap into this information as they become less reliant on third-party cookies. So I'm going to take a closer look at some examples of how our customers today are using CTM to leverage their first-party data and put it into action in meaningful ways. So think of your activities within CallTrackingMetrics, like your calls, texts, chats, and forms, as the tools to build custom first-party audiences. CTM has all the ways to help you segment and fine-tune those audiences. You can hyper-target them across ad channels with specific messaging. So let's dig in a little further and talk through some recommended audience segmentation tips. Our first tip is to use key presses, tags, and/or scores to separate existing customers from prospects, or to segment by the customer journey lifecycle stage. When it comes to targeting your ads using first-party data, there are many reasons why you may want to keep your customer and prospect audiences separate. So for customers, you probably do not want to show your ads to them, right? So you can create a list of customers and exclude that list from your ads targeting, And you can use that same customer list actually to build a lookalike audience off of it. And for prospects, you may want to target them with a specific offer or bid higher for ads targeted to them. So you will want them in their own list as well. So here are a few ways to separate the two lists in CTM. So key press. If you're utilizing our interactive voice menus, you can segment audiences by the caller's key press. For example, if they press 1 for sales and 2 for support, the key press of 1 can be used as a filter for prospects, and the key press of 2 can be used as a filter for customers. And then tags. So you can manually or automatically tag inbound leads in the activity log in CTM, then use those tags to segment your activities. An example here, a caller inquiring about product support can be tagged with customer, while a lead filling out a form requesting a product demo could be tagged with prospect. And lastly, score. So like tags, you can manually or automatically score leads in the activity log, and you can use those scores to segment your list. So you could segment all unqualified contacts, for example, then block that list from your ads targeting. Now, just keep in mind, these are only a few examples. There are so many ways you can set this up and customize in a way that works best for your business. And then thinking again about your prospects, maybe you don't want to target all of them together, but you want to segment and target them based on where they are in their journey to becoming a customer. And then that way you can serve them the most relevant messaging and content. So this is possible in CTM using a custom panel, and it allows you to optimize to all the touch points on that customer's journey to a sale. The custom panel can include a drop-down selection of each lifecycle stage, like you see here, and it allows you to tag and segment those users into their respective audiences. So then while speaking to the lead or after, the agent can qualify and score the lead and assign the journey stage. So then that journey stage can then be one of the ways you segment your prospect audience lists. All right, moving on to our second audience segmentation tip, which is to use conversation intelligence tools in CTM, such as keyword spotting, transcriptions, and chat to identify spoken words and intent. So let me talk through a few examples of this. Did you know CallTrackingMetrics offers a customizable and easy to install live chat feature? So in this example here, we have a website for a chocolate store, and it's common for people who visit the site to decide to chat with an agent rather than search the site. And in this chat, the user is inquiring about custom wedding cakes. So CTM has the tools to extract this specific information about wedding cakes from the chat transcription. Then we can do it for phone calls too. So you can automatically tag and identify the user's interest in custom wedding cakes. And within CallTrackingMetrics, this specific data for wedding cakes, which we extracted from the customer conversation, can be applied to the event CTM sends into platforms like Google Analytics using a trigger. And it can also be used for filtering, which I'm going to talk about a little more on the next slide. But now, knowing that this user is looking for a custom wedding cake, they can be added to a hyper-targeted custom audience using triggers and be served highly relevant ads with their direct interest. In this case, wedding cakes, rather than a generic branding ad to all site visitors about chocolate, resulting in a more personalized experience for the user and higher conversion rates for the advertiser. Our third and final tip is to create saved filters using tracking sources, call length, date ranges, and so much more, including key presses, tags, and scores, like I mentioned earlier. And creating saved filters in CTM is a great way to easily build and segment your first-party data, and it will save you a ton of time. For example, you could create a filter for all leads with a score of, say, 3 stars and above, from a Google Ads tracking source with a sales tag, talk time over 2 minutes, and a date range of last 30 days. That's just an example. So once you have that save filter created, not only can you select it at any time in CTM and view the associated leads, you can also select that save filter for an easy export of those activities. So talk about that a little more here. So CallTrackingMetrics offers pre-formatted export templates to allow for the seamless exporting and uploading of your data between platforms. And there's multiple formats available, including the major ad channels like Google, Facebook, LinkedIn, Microsoft, or you can choose an Excel file if you prefer. So like I mentioned, this saves you a ton of time to not have to manually format your first-party data export files for uploads to these ad channels, which they all do have varying template formats. Okay, so after you export from CTM, you can then easily upload these files into your preferred ad channel and target or exclude the list of users as you choose. For example, using a saved filter you created, you can export a list of users, say, who called your business about a specific product but did not buy the product. And say you want to use Facebook export format for this. You can then easily upload that list of users to Facebook and target them with a promotional offer. So there are so many ways you can slice and dice your first-party data, activity exports for targeting, and using CTM's saved filters and export formats really makes it easy. Okay, before we wrap up, I want to briefly talk about a few more ways that our customers are leveraging CallTrackingMetrics for their first-party data. All right, our Google Ads Direct Connect integration at its very core is using first-party data from CTM to automatically inform campaign optimizations within Google Ads. It is a truly bi-directional integration and allows conversion data to flow freely between CallTrackingMetrics and Google Ads. And it is one of the most straightforward ways to leverage your first-party data in CTM. And CallTrackingMetrics also integrates with other platforms as well, like HubSpot, Salesforce, and many more. And you can take advantage of these integrations by using your first-party call tracking data in CTM to further expand and layer your audiences, increasing the accuracy of your audience segmentation. So for example, you could set up a list of users who made a phone call to your business and visited 20+ pages of your website. So by creating lists of users with these specific activities that you can track in CTM and on other platforms, it allows you the ability to personalize your brand outreach to the user and maximize the value of your first-party data. And as Navah talked about, audiences are so important, right? Okay, I've talked through a number of creative ways our customers are leveraging CallTrackingMetrics for the first-party data, and the results that they've reported back to us are better engagement, improved conversion rates, and faster buying processes. So we encourage you to start using all the features we talked about today in CallTrackingMetrics to get the most out of your first-party data as we head into a future world without cookies. And lastly, it wouldn't be fair to talk about first-party data without talking about privacy. So let's have the consent conversation. So data privacy is at the forefront of everything we do as digital marketers. And when you use CallTrackingMetrics, you have the ability to collect valuable first-party data from your prospects and customers, as we just discussed. And you want to be able to use that data correctly and effectively to develop personalized communications and relationships. So as a business owner or advertiser, the responsibility is on you to collect your first-party data with consent and to keep your privacy policies and cookie policies up to date, so customers know how their data is being used and how they can opt out if they choose. The more you develop trust with your customers, the more willing they will be to opt in and share their data with you. And with that, I'm going to hand it back over to Jeff.
Great. Thank you, Lisa. This was so exciting. Through most of this whole presentation, I'm just like, preach, preach. These are all things that I feel pretty passionately about. So I wanted to give you guys a couple of resources on the topic. So with that, I think these pair very nicely. Fresh off the press, we have our latest ebook. I think this went live this week, so it's hot off the press. And this is leveraging first-party data in a cookieless world. Let me go ahead and put the link to this in the chat to make sure everyone has access to this. 1 second. There we go. And then also, did you guys know we have a podcast? So we actually recently teamed up with Navah to discuss consensual conversations, building customer trust with first-party data. So this is another one that you're definitely going to want to check out. So let me go ahead and post this one into the chat as well. There we go. So everyone should have access to that. So speaking of the podcast, tomorrow we're kicking off the summit with a special live recording of the podcast. So in that episode, our incredibly talented host, who is Courtney Tyson, she'll be sitting down with local search expert Joy Hopkins to dive into the good and the bad of Google My Business. So that actually, because it's a live podcast, is going to be a separate registration. So I'm going to go ahead and post that in the chat as well to make sure that everyone is registered. So I wanted to start by thanking everyone for taking the time out of their busy day to hang out with us. We really appreciate you. But we're going to finish off with some Q&A. So if you have some questions, please ask them, enter them in our chat or our Q&A box. We did have some come in during the presentation. So I'll actually grab the first one, and it was, can you schedule exports in CTM so that you don't have to manually do it each time? So absolutely, of course you can do that. You can schedule the exports to be automated daily, weekly, or monthly. And you can even select the time that you'd like it to land in your inbox. So that is definitely an option for you. Automation, we want to make it easy for you. So let's see some of the other questions we have today. Actually, this one I'm going to direct to you, Lisa. And it is, which is a better option, integration versus manual export?
Sure, good question. It really depends on your data. So I think rule of thumb would be use the integration, right? It's less manual for you, just makes things easier. Always want to take advantage of any marketing automation when you can. However, I think it's a case-by-case basis. So Facebook, for example, you need a lot of events to send into Facebook for them to do anything with it. And that's kind of common on a lot of ad channels for privacy reasons. You can't upload a list of 50 users and expect that you can target them because it's too identifiable, right? So in Facebook's case, they need a couple thousand, I believe, daily to work with. So you may not have that much volume of data. So in that case, I would recommend manual export, and maybe you upload weekly or monthly with that data, so you have enough for Facebook to work with.
Yeah, that makes sense. And that's typically what I tell a lot of the clients that I'm working with. Unless you're doing a lot of volume with Facebook and CTM, that it's probably best just to do a monthly export and upload. It tends to play a lot nicer together. So another question we got, which maybe you both could point on, but someone said that they switching to first-party acquisition is a top priority for their company in 2022. What advice would you have for someone who is just getting started? Do you want to take that, Navah?
Yeah, I'll start, and then Lisa, any other thoughts that you want to chime in with? So the biggest thing is to build in opportunities on the landing page experience to capture that information. So whether that's an abandoned cart that you've at least have caught at least the promo information for a discount. The other thing to think about is, what is your internal system? So beyond the paid side, take stock of if you're using Shopify on the e-commerce side, that does a lot of the management for you. If you're using HubSpot, that does a lot of the management for you. Whatever your internal management system is for your customer data, you want to make sure that that is clean and easy. I will give another big shout out. I love CallTrackingMetrics. I'll take the check in the mail. Not really. I will shout to the roof how much I love CallTrackingMetrics. They do a really good job of being kind of a pseudo CRM system as well. So if you're really stuck, I actually definitely recommend exploring their product suite on that side if you're a lead gen. The only other thing I will say is that, and we didn't touch on it too much in this session because I was a little bit nervous it would be too technical. You want to do a really thorough audit of all of your UTM parameters. And the reason why you want to do that is that UTMs are how you will be able to get all of those different channels that are driving traffic to your business to really communicate that attribution. It's very easy for sources of truth to be corrupted because of whatever reason, but that UTM is going to tell you exactly where the traffic came from. So really make sure that your UTMs are set correctly so that you're able to see that full user journey beyond just capturing that information. So those three things are, just to sum up, make sure you're capturing information on the landing page, make sure your CRM or whatever sources of truth are above board, and make sure your UTMs are in good order.
That's great. I'll just add to that. Nava, that was spot on, but I would just say, don't wait, like start now. The sooner you can get ahead of it and figure out what you're working with in terms of your data and your platforms, you're going to be in a better position. So start now.
Yeah, and I love the point that Nava made about the landing pages. Don't make me scroll. I can't agree more. Like, landing pages are key. You have the people there, give them the best experience. So let's see, we have about 4 minutes left. Any last questions before we go, guys? We've got two fabulous experts here, so questions.
One thing I will just say, it's not so much an answer to a question, it's just a general statement. It is worth taking stock of all of your tools. Just because you're working with an amazing vendor like CallTrackingMetrics doesn't necessarily mean that every tool that they might have to plug into is compliant with first-party data and privacy rules. So I can say from working directly on my own clients with CallTrackingMetrics, like they are amazing. Like you're 100% in good hands. Be sure that you're auditing all of your tools. Make sure that all of them are compliant because when it comes to maintaining those first party data sets, looking at your URL structure, looking at your compliance for opt-ins, all of that, you really want to make sure that every part of your MarTech stack is serving you well. So I guess I'll just add one more statement onto the previous answer. Audit your MarTech stack. Really make sure that there are no gaps where you could be found in violation of the privacy first web.
And that's a great point. That's actually our final session today, and it's going to be making, I think it's sorting your messy MarTech stack. So tune in for that. I believe that's at 4 o'clock. So we'll complement this very well. All right. Well, with that, I do believe we're out of time. So thank you all so much for attending, and thank you to our fabulous presenters. The last thing we have here is we would love your feedback. So please provide it. We want to be, the best that we can. So if you scan this, it'll actually give you a form you can fill out. And I wanted to give one last reminder that if you register for day 3 and attend any of the sessions, you'll automatically be entered into our raffle to win a professional services package. So definitely worth taking advantage of. And with that, thank you all so much, and enjoy the rest of the summit.
Cheers, guys.
See ya.
Bye, thank you.